We often think about mental health as something that happens inside our own heads, right? But have you ever stopped to think about how much your world, your job, your family, your community really shapes your mind? Well, today we're diving deep into something called social psychiatry, and it explores exactly that. So let's start with a really basic question. When I say the word psychiatry, what pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's probably things like brain chemistry, genes, maybe medication. But what if I told you that's only one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle?
Because the truth is, what's going on inside our brains is deeply, profoundly connected to the world happening outside of them.
And that, right there, is where social psychiatry steps in. It's an entire approach that says, hey, let's zoom out a little. Let's look beyond just the brain and see the whole world that person lives in.
So to put a finer point on it, social psychiatry is all about looking at how our social environment, our culture, our family dynamics, our friendships, our workplaces, how all of that stuff directly affects our mental health. It's built on this really simple but powerful idea that, no person is an island.
To really get this, let's look at two different ways of thinking. On one hand, you've got the purely biological model. It's laser-focused on the brain, on genes, on chemicals. It kind of sees an illness all by itself. But then you have the biopsychosocial model, and this is the heart of social psychiatry. It looks at everything, the biology, sure, but also our psychology and our social world. It's about seeing the whole person. Now, this more holistic view has had a real uphill battle. For a long time, the field was just dominated by what some critics called a bio-bio-bio paradigm. Everything was reduced to biology, and the social part, it often got left behind. Social psychiatry has really had to fight to keep the social in biopsychosocial. Okay, so this all sounds good in theory, right? But what does it actually mean for a patient? Because it's in the real lived experiences of people that this whole social thing becomes incredibly, deeply human. To see what I mean, let's look at a powerful study that talked to patients living with a colostomy. And this isn't just about a medical condition. It's about the massive ripple effect it has on a person's entire life. And what the researchers found was just heartbreaking. They heard the same themes over and over. Patients talked about this crushing anxiety and fear. They felt embarrassed, depressed, even ashamed. Many felt they'd lost their independence, and maybe the worst part, some were actually rejected by their own families.
I mean, just listen to these words from one person. They said, "My children do not come to me because they feel foul odor coming from me. It hurts me a lot." You see, that's not a biological symptom. That is a deep social wound.
Another patient just captured this feeling of a life completely derailed. They said, "I pray to God that no one should have this bag. My whole life was disturbed due to ostomy. Their entire world, their identity was just shattered." And that's a kind of suffering that goes so far beyond the physical.
This is what we're talking about when we say the social context of an illness. The isolation, the shame, the rejection. This is the human reality that social psychiatry says we absolutely cannot ignore.
Now, it's so important to realize these individual stories aren't just isolated incidents. They're pointing to a much bigger problem in our society, this huge gap between the mental health support people need and what's actually available.
Let this number sink in for a second. Mental and substance use disorders account for 7.4% of the entire global burden of disease. I mean, that is a bigger slice of the pie than HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, or diabetes. It's absolutely massive. So if the need is so huge, why aren't people getting help? Well, one of the single biggest roadblocks is social stigma. It's that same shame and fear we just heard in those patient stories. It literally prevents millions of people from ever reaching out for care. So what do? Social psychiatry gives us a pretty clear roadmap. It says we have to fight this stigma on 3 levels at once. At the individual level, by making sure people can actually get treatment. At the societal level, by spreading awareness and getting communities involved. And at the institutional level, by building strong national mental health services. It's a full court press for a really complex problem.
Okay, so let's bring it all back home. Why does all of this social stuff really truly matter in medicine?
It matters because it reminds us of something so fundamental. You simply cannot separate a person's mind from the world they live in. Our health isn't just written in our DNA. It's shaped by our connections, our communities, and our sense of belonging.
There's a quote from Mahatma Gandhi that just nails this whole idea perfectly. He said, "Science without humanity is a social sin." And that's the point, isn't it? When we reduce a person to just a collection of symptoms, we lose sight of their humanity. And when we do that, we lose our ability to truly help them heal.
So I'll just leave you with this to think about. In our world of amazing medical technology and specialized doctors, how do we make sure our healthcare system always sees the person behind the diagnosis? How do we make sure we're treating the whole person and not just the patient?